Good evening, good morning. Welcome to PADM 401, Lesson 12 for the Penn State Homeland Security degree. Just want to start off with announcements. Again, paper 2 is due next week, a week from today, the 24th, July 24th, due at 11:59 p.m. I have not gotten any requests for extensions, and I've said earlier I will not be unless there's a family emergency or some medical emergency. I'm not going to be too generous with extensions. You've known this for some time, and I want to try and keep the deadlines to what the deadlines are. So again, the due date's a week from now. If you have not gotten me your paper topic, send it to me as soon as possible so I can comment. And I think I've commented on everyone's paper topic so far. One thing I do want to bring up is there was a EU report on Paris. The November, a couple of people are doing your papers on the European Union and border security issues. And there was a report on Paris that I can't find on the internet that has been scrubbed, and I don't know why. So I'm going to try and find I'll see if I can find any articles about the EU, the border issues with the EU, because there's about 4 or 5 people that are doing their paper on that, particularly after what's happened in Paris last week, what's happened in Belgium, what happened in Paris at the end of the year, and how we know ISIS is trying to or is taking advantage of the loose borders within Europe to infiltrate people. So I'll send it, if I can find a news article on that, I'll go ahead and send that. But I apologize. I told a couple of people that Paris, there was an article by the EU on the November 2015 attacks, and apparently it's not on the internet anymore. So job talk. I'm going to shift the date a week out. A lot of people said they couldn't make it because they're busy that week. They're finishing up other courses, and also it is apparently it's the last day of the Democratic Convention. So I will push it a week off to August 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've already gotten some people who have questions about it. And please send me questions, especially after the paper's done, so I can prep and make sure that I can answer all your issues. If you can't make it, I will post a job talk on YouTube so you can watch it at your own leisure. So current events, I think the big thing is what happened in France. A lot of current events have gone on the last 3 or 4 days, but I think the most relevant is what happened in Nice, France. Let me actually back up. Republican National Convention is this week, and I think for those of you who have not worked in the Homeland Security, whenever there's a big event, that takes up the vast majority of Homeland Security's resources. In fact, Homeland Security is focused on securing these big events, whether they're national conventions, presidential inaugurations, when the Pope visits, Olympics. I think that those types of events provide focus to Homeland Security to make sure that there's no, the fear of adverse publicity if the Republican National Convention or Democratic National Convention is actually attacked. So again, and I've been watching some of the news about the security, and I just want you to follow the news to look at all the security emphasis, everything from violent protesters to terrorist attack, and what the Homeland Security apparatus is doing to prevent it. And I'm talking everything from the police to federal level agencies like the Secret Service and Homeland Security are engaged. One thing I will say is I went to a briefing where they've come up with a software, not really a software, more of a storage, to map out all of the key vulnerability areas in Cleveland in preparation for the Republican National Convention. And it's you can imagine Google Street View. It's similar to that, except there's no Google Street View for Cleveland Airport. There's no Google Street View for the inside of the arena. And they've actually gone in and, just like Google Street View does, they drove down the street and walked down the hallways, and they took cameras or took imagery of the entire stadium, the airport, the routes going to and from. And the whole thing is, if there is let's say, another sniper like there was in Dallas, or an insider threat, they can immediately pull up the imagery so the SWAT teams, or even just the people who are trying to prevent this thing from happening have something to plan off. And for those of you who are in the military, you plan off imagery to make sure that your operations are successful. So they have something now. Again, it's a software storage. It can be pushed to police, pushed to SWAT teams, pushed to any official that on demand that needs access. And let's say there's a riot happening in the third corridor of the Republican National Convention, they can pull the imagery up and can start planning to deal with that. So that's something that actually is pretty interesting and is very Homeland Security related. Second thing, again, is what happened in Nice, France. 84 people, as of now, were killed in that tragic vehicle accident, or I don't want to say accident, but vehicle vectored attack. That is not new. That is not new, that type of tactic. It has been on Al-Qaeda and ISIS websites. They've been encouraging people to do something similar along those lines. So I've heard in the media again that this is something new or an innovation by ISIS, and that's not true. The question is, could it have been stopped? You are now at Homeland Security, and you're working at Homeland Security, and someone says, can you stop something like this from happening? I don't have an answer. If you take my other terrorism class here in Penn State, one of the things I argue is, if you have intelligence on a threat, and let's say we did know that this type of tactic was being used, vehicle-borne vectors to drive over people to cause mass casualty events. What can you do? It's not just saying that there's intelligence, vague intelligence, or this is a tactic, but does the response, is a reasonable response sufficient? Could you secure every single crowd gathering in France, even if you knew this type of attack was occurring? Is it worth the cost? One thing I say when I talk about 9/11, we knew that an airplane, or we had some vague intelligence that an airplane could be used as a Tomahawk missile, as it was on September 11th. The argument is, well, there's nothing you can do because the intelligence was so broad. But the other argument is that the cost to make sure that an airplane does not turn into a Tomahawk missile, for lack of a better term, is not that high. If you reinforce 20% of cargo doors and you put air marshals on 20% of aircraft, in the grand scheme of things, that's not very expensive. And that is enough of a reaction that could have prevented a 9/11-like scenario from happening. Now, for Nice, France, again, we had vague intelligence that the Al-Qaeda and ISIS wanted to use this type of tactic, but is it really reasonable that we could have secured every spot where there's large gatherings of people on major holidays? I'll let you decide, but I'll say that the risks of putting that much resources would not have been a reasonable manner in trying to stop a threat like this. And it goes along with what the theme I've been bringing up is that it is very difficult to stop attacks like this. Not ISIS-inspired attacks, particularly if and it looks like this guy was psychologically imbalanced. I don't have an answer for the lone wolf type of strike that ISIS and other extremist groups inspire. And again, I mentioned the risk trade-off. The risk would be, yes, you could prevent this from happening, but you would have to almost have huge perimeter security or trigger-happy police around every single event, gathering, race, like a marathon race, to stop it from happening. And that's very difficult to do. So discussion 12, risk-informed citizenry, and I'm going to, I'm not dumb. I know that with the paper due, there probably won't be a lot of emphasis on this week's lessons. So I'm going to try and just give you, again, some of the key points. Read the lesson. Don't go without it before you answer on the discussion board. But, I know people probably won't read the entire Congressional Research Service papers that are attached to this lesson. So, again, what do you need for risk-informed citizenry? And I think the United States does not have a very well risk-informed citizenry. If there's an attack, there tends to be a panic mode. There tends to be very poor signals, like focused intelligence given. Just point of comparison for Israel, there's a very resilient population that if there's an attack on Monday, on Tuesday, everyone still goes about their day-to-day business. And I don't think that happens quite in the United States. Israel also, they're informed of the threat because, again, they're given very targeted information on the threat. In the United States, we have broad, if you see something, say something. We had the color codes back in the earlier days that were really just laughable. In Israel, it's focused. They don't give a targeted threat across the whole country. They'll only give the threat out to the area where they suspect somebody is or there's a higher level of threat, and they'll keep it confined. And they'll take the trade-off to prevent it from having a wide, large announcement. So again, for me, for a risk-informed citizenry, two things: has to be resilient. Again, they can't let an attack affect their day-to-day lives, and the threat must be communicated in a way, informed of the threat, but communicated in a way that the citizens are responsive, not broad-based, one-over-the-world threats to the entire country, certainly not color codes that affect the country, things that are a little bit more focused. So again, I look forward to your papers, and I know most people will be spending this week working on them. The one thing I ask is this isn't college. I know some of you are undergrads in this course, but it's a graduate level course. Please don't leave your paper till Sunday night. Do your paper, do it a couple of days early, get a day's rest, and then reread your paper to make sure it's clear, cogent, you have a consistent argument. Because some of the papers beforehand were kind of difficult to read and lacked that kind of focus. So please, again, if you haven't started your paper, you probably should start it as soon as possible. If there's questions or issues, please don't hesitate to ask. And again, I look forward to reading your papers.